I live in a very rural, mountainous area of California, and at this time I was working as a cook in a restaurant bar. I was 24 and not in the best financial situation, so I had been borrowing my uncle's car to drive to and from work. I worked from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. I know everyone in this area well, and I don't have a single enemy. I get along with everyone. One night I had finished closing up the kitchen and decided to have a beer before going home. The bartender was talking to a fellow community member, trying to convince him to go home because he was too drunk for his own good. There were some out-of-towners who weren't too fond of the locals' demeanor, and it seemed like tensions were rising between them. I just saw it as a local that I knew being annoyingly drunk but perfectly harmless. After having my beer, I headed out to my car. Looking back into the bar, I spotted the heavily intoxicated local. I felt a bit guilty for not offering him a ride home, but I was tired from work and convinced myself he'd be all right. I drove off. Keep in mind, there were no street lamps, no buildings around. It was the middle of nowhere, utterly dark, silent. About a mile away from the bar, it struck me that I should turn around and offer him a ride home. He didn't live far, and it wouldn't be a major detour. I found a muddy turnout and turned back. Returning to the bar, I was rather curt with the local, telling him that I'd pick him up in the morning when he could retrieve his truck sober. I would give him a ride home tonight. At 24, I was a small-built female, and he was a smaller-built guy who appeared to be around 35. Although he had hit on me in the past, I just considered him an odd 35-year-old loner and always brushed off his advances. With a couple of minutes of persuasion, he finally got into the car, and I set off towards his home, which was about 5 miles away via winding mountain roads. Initially, there wasn't much to notice. He seemed drunk, quiet, and mumbling. But not too far into the drive, he began expressing gratitude and complimenting me for helping him out. I responded with the usual niceties. Of course, no problem. I couldn't leave him there, knowing he was in no shape to drive. This is where things started to get unsettling. I made a turn onto the road leading to his home. It was a long road with few houses, and all the driveways were long, about a mile or two, making the houses hard to spot. He grew really quiet, and the car's interior was dark. I couldn't see him clearly. However, I noticed him looking at me. I could see the reflection of his eyes in the dim lights from the radio. I distinctly remember this, his eyes shining a kind of green due to the radio knob lights. He was just staring at me. Without meeting his gaze, I asked, "What's up? Why are you looking at me like that?" He responded, "You're so pretty, and I never get a chance to be alone with you." I brushed it off, trying to act nonchalant, though I was starting to feel uneasy about my decision. All of a sudden, he reaches over to me while I'm driving and tries to put his hand, I'm assuming, on my breast. But instead, his hands land on my shoulder and neck area. I start yelling at him, telling him to stop. I slam on my brakes in the middle of the road. No one is behind me. There's no one for miles. And I scream at him to get out of this car now! And I repeat it over and over. At this point, I had my hands off the wheel and I was trying to push him out of the car. I had leaned over and opened the car door. I had never in my life realized my own strength, my own weak strength. This 30-something male was not budging against me. I notice him laughing, a really sloppy laugh. He says, "You and I both know that no one is around." I said to him, "We just left the bar. At least 5 people know where I am going. Please stop. Here's a flashlight. Walk on home. I'm done with you tonight." He is quiet for a minute before saying, "I don't feel like walking much." The way he said it scared the living shit out of me. I start screaming, not like a horse scream, but like an ear-piercing scream. I knew the scream was strong and loud, and I had even hurt my own ears, just hoping someone had their windows open somewhere off in the woods. But nothing happened. We struggled for what felt like minutes as he kept trying to come at me. This entire time, he was kind of laughing. He was drunk, so that was probably my only advantage. I was not. He was sloppy and trying to attack me for whatever reason. I pushed on him like I had never pushed on anything in my life. I pushed so hard that I felt my arms just burning with pain. When he finally gets out of the car, I slam on the gas, not even bothering with the door. Remember, I was headed down a long-ass road in the middle of nowhere, and not on my road. It's a dead-end road after about 20 miles, so I keep driving down this road I know well, knowing full well I will need to stop to turn around. But this road is like 1.5 lanes wide, and there are hardly any turnouts. When I finally do, I turn around fast and in someone's dirt driveway, afraid of the car being still for even a second. I take off driving, knowing he'll be up ahead any second. I never see him again. He was a local I'd known for years and saw frequently. I don't know if he took off to another area from embarrassment or what, but I never saw him again. I arrived home, shaking, red, scratched, out of breath. My boyfriend and our friend were at home playing Jenga, and I told them immediately. They knew who it was too, and they went to try and find him. Never saw him again. That was last November. Let's hope I never meet up with him again.
One or 2 months ago, my girlfriend and I went out to our favorite bar. The drive is a tad longer than an hour to our place from the bar, primarily on barren interstate after the first 15 minutes, save for a few rural exits and one rest stop a little over halfway home. My girlfriend was sober that night and was driving. I had had a bit to drink and was feeling warm and tipsy. I asked my girlfriend to make a quick stop at the rest area so I could pee. Thanks, beer. This is a normal stop for us to make if one of us has been drinking, since the rest area has its own direct exit and entrance, so it is faster than taking an actual exit into a town for a gas station. The rest area has only one road in and one out and is surrounded by trees to the point you cannot see the facility from the freeway. It has wooded walking trails. By the time I hopped out of the car at the rest stop, it was sometime around 3 a.m. As mentioned, this is a fairly regular stop, and until that day, the only other person I had seen in that rest stop around that time of night was the guy who maintains it. I walk in, the vending area is empty and completely silent. I make my way over to the men's room and push it open to be immediately startled by this old man, maybe mid-60s or so, standing immediately to the left of the door inside the bathroom. He was wearing what I can only describe as an Inspector Gadget coat and slacks. I noticed he had a cell phone in his hand when I opened the door, but it was hanging down at his side and the screen was not lit up. He stares at me and I stare back for a split second. Then I get over it and pass him to head over to the urinals. I take the urinal closest to the sinks when I notice he made no indication he was going to walk out, because there is basically a wall of mirrors stretched out far enough that I can watch him in the mirror while I'm at the urinal. I unzip and keep my eyes on the mirror, but make sure not to turn my head at all. By the time I look in the mirror, his phone is up in his hand and on as if he were texting, but he seems to be staring at me rather than the phone. Either way, he definitely was not looking at his phone. A very long 60 seconds pass, and I absolutely cannot pee with this silent guy staring at my back from the door. Then in the mirror, I notice him take a small, slow step forward. I tell myself, I'm just tipsy and imagining it, to just get on with my pee and get the hell out of there. Then he takes a more obvious step forward, and I put it in my pants while I speed walk to the back handicap stall and lock the door. I went to the back where my feet were not visible and texted my girlfriend about the creepy guy inside with me. I sit and wait to hear the door open, signaling him leaving, but it still does not. After possibly the longest 8 minutes of my life, I hear the door open and close. I wait another 2 minutes and finally pee in the stall. I crack the stall door first. Luckily, the bathroom isn't huge, and I had almost complete visibility of the room from the stall I picked. I saw no signs of anyone else, so I walked out, washed my hands, and beelined it back to the parking lot. I finally make it back to the car and ask my girlfriend what car the old guy got into. She turns to me wide-eyed and says, "He didn't get into one. He just walked across the parking lot and went into the tree line." With the rest stop being the only thing on the very short on-off ramps, and the other closest civilization being 5 miles by interstate, I don't know where that guy was going. Later I realized that although the rest area main room is small, there is a second entrance exit on the side that goes to a patio backing up to the woods. I forget about it because I never use it, but if that guy had somehow managed to get a jump on me, he could easily have pulled me out of that door, and my girlfriend wouldn't have even seen it. I don't know if that was his plan, and I ruined it when I made my dash for the stall. But regardless, an old man creeping in the rest stop bathroom in the wee hours, let's not meet again. Several years ago, when I was living at college, I would go home on many weekends. After Friday night parties, the college was quite boring, as many students just slept off their hangovers all day. One particular weekend, my parents went on a getaway, leaving me to watch over the pets. I'm an only child, so I had the house to myself. I did my usual routine, doing laundry, feeding the dogs, catching up with friends, relaxing, and late at night, I would go to a hangout spot. a nightclub about 25 miles away. I was there until close at 2 a.m. and then got in the car alone to drive home. After I got off the freeway, there were several miles of open roads to take on my route to my house. At that time, there were not really any other cars on the road except myself and a single car behind me. I hadn't really thought anything of it at first, but as I got closer to my town, I had noticed the car was still behind me and had been on every road I had been on for the past 11 miles. Coincidental, I thought, but odd enough, I decided to put my mind at rest by checking to see if this person was really following me. I ended up approaching a stop sign at an intersection and put my left turn signal on. The car behind also put their left signal on. I made a quick right and saw the car behind me went right as well. Now I was on guard. I was approaching a stoplight. I slowed to make sure nothing was coming and ran the light. The car behind me ran right through the light as well. I was being followed. Every turn trick I tried, the car was right behind me. I was getting within a mile of my house, and my mind was racing. Now, this was several years ago, long before the days of having a cell phone in the car to phone for help. I didn't know if it was one person or many. I was thinking, I could go to my house, but it was a risk. I didn't know the person's intentions, and obviously, if they were running red lights to keep up with me, the intentions were not good. I was thinking to myself, I would have to park the car, run to the front door as fast as possible, unlock the front door, if I could make it. And even if they didn't chase me in, they would know where I lived, and I wouldn't be able to sleep all weekend. Another thought was, maybe I would keep going a few more miles and try to lose them on some country roads I knew. But what if I couldn't lose them? It suddenly came to me not to drive home, but drive to the local police station. It's kind of humorous, I didn't think of that right away. But then again, our local police were the stereotypical buffoons. As I turned into the police station's parking lot, I saw the car continue on. I sat in the parking lot for about 5 minutes, but didn't go in to report it. I was very paranoid upon leaving, thinking they were waiting and watching up the street. I circled the streets around the station over and over again, just to make sure there were no suspicious-looking parked cars anywhere, and to make sure I was not going to be followed again. Every once in a while, I think about what would have happened if I tried to go home or tried to outrun the car.